Hello everyone, my name is Holger and this is another video on the What Show Theory channel, which is dedicated to analysis and predictions about the Wheel of Time TV show. In this video I'm going to discuss a particular event from season 2 of the TV show, and that is Nynaeve's acceptor test. The third part of the test is especially unusual, and so far I've not seen any thorough analysis of it yet, so that is what I'm trying to do in this video. But first a spoiler warning. This video does contain minor spoilers. I recommend that before watching this video you watch the first season of the TV show and at least the first 5 episodes of season 2. Also, if you intend to read the books at all, then you may want to read books 1 and 2 first. I do not spoil any book-specific events in this video, but I do reference some concepts from those books and compare Nynaeve's acceptor test from the show to the version in the books. So let's look at the different parts of the acceptor test. The first 2 parts are relatively unremarkable. In the first part, the choice Nynaeve has is between her family, specifically her parents, and the tower. There are some nice touches in this part. For example, the shot in which we see Nynaeve look at a mirror image of herself on the surface of the water. She sees a younger version of herself here, portrayed by a younger actress. This is a nice compromise by the writers, because it allows us to have Zoe Robbins and her amazing acting skills play out the scene, but we still get a hint that in that scene Nynaeve is supposed to be much younger, and also looks younger to herself and to others. The fact that Nynaeve is hidden in a cellar is nice foreshadowing for the third part of the test, in which she hides her own daughter in the cellar. And of course we see her dad speak a few sentences in Old Tongue, which Nynaeve remembers and which we see Nynaeve recite to Lan earlier in season 1. In the second part, the choice Nynaeve has is between being a village wisdom in the 2 rivers, along with helping others in the village at a time when a deadly plague is spreading through the village, versus a career on the tower. The most remarkable part here is that we see Tam al'Thor and Nettie Cawthon again, somewhat unexpectedly in season 2. The most interesting part of her acceptor test is the third part though, where we see multiple events that deviate from what usually happens during the acceptor test, and some of them do not have an obvious explanation. I'll go through the third part of the test and first analyze those parts that have an obvious explanation. After that I'll go back, present my theory of what I think the writers were trying to do here overall, and then fill in the blanks. It starts with a flickery sequence of images showing Nynaeve and Lan. The images don't really make it clear what is happening, and I'll get back to them in a moment.
A remarkable woman, Wisdom. As beautiful as the sun. As fierce as a warrior. Oh, a lioness, Wisdom.
Then Nynaeve steps out of the arch, with blood all over her, which Leanne then confirms is not Nynaeve's blood. Nynaeve also has a Hadori in her hand, which she assumes belongs to Lan. At this point viewers are meant to believe that the third part of Nynaeve's acceptor test has already happened, and that perhaps those flickery images were the whole test, or that we're not meant to know what happened. Nynaeve herself does not remember what happened either, which is unusual because novices are supposed to remember after each part of the test what happened during that part. This apparent amnesia is actually the first hint that what we are seeing here is not the end of the third part of the test, but the beginning. That's because amnesia is exactly what happened at the beginning of each of the other 2 parts, when Nynaeve did not remember why she was in the field, and what was going on in the village causing those illnesses. Nynaeve does not pick up on this clue here though, and most viewers probably did not either on the first watch. I certainly did not. It later becomes clear that Nynaeve was actually dropped into a type of mirror world right after she stepped through the arch, and that really nothing happened to her after that point, except perhaps for seeing those flickery images. I'll get back to that in a moment. Next we see Nynaeve become increasingly worried that she was somehow responsible for harming or even killing Lan, and that the Aes Sedai supervising her test were somehow responsible for that.
What did I do in that last arch? What did you make me do?
Leanne's earlier comment that it is sometimes better not to remember certainly did not help to reassure Nynaeve. Since this is all part of Nynaeve's acceptor test, it is clear that the test scenario itself is trying very hard to get Nynaeve to make the decision to leave the tower. The test scenario pretty much makes it impossible for Nynaeve to stay without compromising her values. As she leaves, it becomes clear that the world into which Nynaeve has been dropped is extremely expansive, including not just the full tower and its inhabitants, but also many other landscapes and people. We even later hear about events happening in Sardea. Overall, Nynaeve's testing world looks a lot more comprehensive than a typical testing environment, and probably includes a full copy of the regular in-story world that branched off from the regular world at the point when Nynaeve stepped into the Arch for her third test. As far as I can tell, all aspects of Nynaeve's testing world are identical to the regular world, with two exceptions. In Nynaeve's world, she has stepped out of the Arch already and believes that she has completed the test, whereas in the regular world, she's still in the Arch and her test is ongoing. Also, in Nynaeve's world, Lan has found out about her accepted test and has made his way almost to the White Tower, whereas in the regular world, Lan is with Alanna after Moraine left him behind. Overall, the events in this mirror world seem to closely follow the events in the regular world, except for Nynaeve and Lan, who both live near the two rivers, and apparently do not participate in the build-up towards the last battle. My interpretation of the way this world is used is that this mirror world is actually a flicker world. This means a partial adaptation of the Flicker event in The Great Hunt, but only for Nynaeve and Lan. The flickery image sequence at the beginning is the visual clue for viewers that what follows is a flicker world, and the other hint we have is the episode title, What Might Be, which is the chapter title of the Flicker event in The Great Hunt. So let's go back to the events in the mirror world. Next, Nynaeve encounters Lan on his way to the tower after he found out about Nynaeve's accepted test. The two of them meet, and now we have the next strange event. Nynaeve hears Sheriam's voice in her head, reminding her about the way back, just like in the earlier parts of the test. But this time the voice seems to be muffled and distorted, and Nynaeve is unable to make out the words. Also, the portal opens behind Nynaeve, where she cannot see it. When she does notice that something is not right and turns around, the portal has already closed almost completely. This means even if Nynaeve had realized the meaning of all of this, she would still not have had enough time to jump through the portal. What's going on here? Clearly the test appears to be rigged. Nynaeve is never given a fair chance to pass the test. It is not realistic to expect Nynaeve to choose to go back to the tower after the test scenario has already pushed her to reject the tower earlier, especially not now, right after meeting Lan, and certainly not after Nynaeve has been tricked into thinking that she has already passed the test. In addition, Nynaeve has not been given enough time to understand what is happening. Between that and Nynaeve being unable to make out Sheriam's voice in her head, it appears that the test has specifically been rigged for Nynaeve to fail the test, which is extremely unusual. I'll get back to that later. After that, there's a gap of several years, during which Nynaeve and Lan live near the two rivers and raise their daughter, Elnor. Events continue with Mat arriving and bringing news of Trollocs invading Sardea, with Egwene and other Green Archer Aes Sedai involved in the fighting, which probably hints at the beginning of the last battle. Shortly after that, we see Trollocs attack Nynaeve's home. This suggests that Egwene and the other Aes Sedai may have been unsuccessful in defeating the Trollocs near Sardea, and Egwene may well have died in the effort. It might also indicate that the last battle is going badly. In the two rivers, we see the Trollocs start killing everyone, and while that is happening, Nynaeve is able to hide Elnor in a cellar, similar to how Nynaeve's parents hid her during the first part of her accepted test. Eventually, Nynaeve has another major outburst of the One Power. It was similar to the one in Season 1, Episode 4, but this time she uses it to kill the remaining Trollocs. Too late though, because the Trollocs have already killed almost everyone, and specifically many of Nynaeve's friends, including Mat, Perrin, and Lan. After that, we have another perplexing event, and that is another portal opening up, seemingly out of nowhere. Fans have proposed two theories about how this portal was created. One is that this is the regular portal of the third part of Nynaeve's accepted test. This means that Nynaeve has been inside of the test for all of those years. This is extremely unlikely though, for two reasons. First of all, we see the earlier portal, the one in the scene with Lan, disappear, and right after that the archers in the regular world power down. That marks the end of the third part of Nynaeve's accepted test. This means the portal that ends Nynaeve's accepted test is the one in the scene with Lan, not the later portal. Also, there are two differences between the regular accepted test portals and the portal we see after the Trolloc scene. First, accepted test portals are always preceded by Nynaeve hearing Sheriam's voice in her head, which did not happen after the Trolloc scene. Second, accepted test portals appear to be visible only to Nynaeve. Other people in the scene apparently cannot see them, which is most obvious in the scene with Lan, where Lan looks in the direction of the portal that has formed behind Nynaeve, yet he does not mention it. The portal that forms after the Trolloc attack is visible to Elnor though, who points it out to Nynaeve, so it has to be a different kind of portal. The other theory is that Nynaeve somehow opened the portal herself, probably in the outburst of the One Power she uses to kill the remaining Trollocs, somewhat similar to how she forces open a portal in the book version of her accepted test. This explanation is also unlikely, again for two reasons. First of all, Nynaeve has no reason to believe that she's even in the accepted test anymore. From her point of view, she finished the accepted test successfully when she stepped out of the Arches years ago. Nynaeve only seems to remember the accepted test after she sees the portal, when she recites Sheriam's instructions to herself. The other reason why the portal was probably not opened by Nynaeve is timing. Nynaeve's power burst happens around 1 hour, 1 minute and 41 seconds into the episode. About 39 seconds later, we get these shots of Nynaeve bending over Lan, and in the background we see the edge of a roof and a fence post, with no indications of a portal. Then the camera cuts to Elnor pointing to the portal, 41 seconds after Nynaeve's power burst. The camera switches back to Nynaeve, and behind her we see the portal. We also see the same roof edge and fence post, which are now enveloped by the portal. This tells us that just a few seconds earlier, before the camera cut to Elnor, the portal had not formed yet, so we now have a precise timeline. The portal must have formed around 41 seconds after Nynaeve's power burst. This means right after the camera cuts to Elnor and before Elnor points out the portal. 41 seconds is a pretty long time, and it does not seem reasonable for the effect of a weave to be delayed for so long. So the bottom line is that this was neither a regular testing portal nor a portal created by Nynaeve, so there must be another explanation. I'll get back to that in a moment. So looking at the third part of Nynaeve's accepted test overall, here are the anomalies compared to regular accepted tests. First, there are flickery images associated with the test which Nynaeve may or may not see. Second, Nynaeve is dropped into a much more expansive world than you would usually get in an accepted test, and she stays in that world much longer than usual. Third, the test is clearly rigged against her, not giving her a chance to pass. This means the whole purpose of the scenario seems to be to play out the aftermath of Nynaeve's failure. And fourth, at the end of the sequence, a mysterious unexplained portal appears that takes Nynaeve back to the regular world. So what is the explanation for all of this? Why is the third part of Nynaeve's accepted test so strange? I think the answer is related to the fact that Nynaeve is very special, and I'm not talking about her power here, but about the fact that she is ta'veren. We know that ta'veren not only often have special abilities, and that events and behaviors of other people around them are often influenced by the wheel to help ta'veren in some form. But on the flip side, ta'veren have a specific purpose in the pattern, and because of that, usually fewer choices than ordinary people. If a ta'veren were to try to make decisions that go against their purpose in the pattern, then the wheel may intervene to push the ta'veren back on track. That is, I think, what is happening here with Nynaeve's accepted test. The third part of the test is not so much a test as it is a lesson for Nynaeve. Nynaeve is dropped into a mirror world and is then manipulated into leaving the tower. After that, she gets to meet Lan, and at that time the wheel deliberately lets Nynaeve fail her test, causing the archers in the regular world to power down. Everything from that point on is designed to show Nynaeve the disastrous consequences of abandoning her channeling career and leaving the tower. Once all of the events have played out, and everyone except for Nynaeve and Elnor are dead, the wheel creates a portal to allow Nynaeve to return to the regular world. So the answer to who created the portal is simple. It is the wheel itself, just like the wheel created the whole teaching scenario for Nynaeve. The reason for the portal to be created specifically at this time is because now all of the events have played out, and Nynaeve has all of the information the wheel was trying to teach her, and all that is left for Nynaeve is to return to the regular world. Why would the wheel decide to intervene in this way? Probably because there was the danger of Nynaeve veering off course, away from the purpose the wheel has given her in the pattern. We know from a later dialogue with Egwene that Nynaeve only came to the tower because of Egwene in the first place, that she was unhappy with her progress and frustrated by her block, as we find out in an earlier scene with Alanna. Nynaeve had even taken up sword training. The wheel had every reason to be worried about Nynaeve giving up her channeling career, especially after all of the girls are taken away from the tower to Falme. So for the wheel to use Nynaeve's accepted test as an opportunity for an intervention makes a lot of sense. Moving on to the events that happen after Nynaeve's return, initially she is understandably distraught after losing not just the last few years of her life, but also her daughter. I would expect that in the hours after that, she likely starts wondering why her accepted test played out like that, and she probably understands that she has been given a glimpse into the future, the way it would unfold if she were to leave the tower, abandon her channeling career, and choose a quiet family life with Lan. By doing this, she would not only remove herself from the preparations for the last battle, but also Lan, with catastrophic consequences. The final scene of interest in the storyline, at the beginning of the next episode, starts with Nynaeve sitting on her bed, notably not wearing her accepted ring. She still appears to be haunted by her experience when someone knocks on her door. She heads towards the door to open it, and then changes her mind and puts on her ring first, reluctantly, probably because she feels that wearing her ring is expected of her now. The person at the door is Egwene, who almost immediately notices Nynaeve's ring and asks her how does it feel. For Egwene, the ring symbolizes recognition of Nynaeve's abilities and achievements, and the trust other Aes Sedai now presumably place in Nynaeve, all things that Egwene craves, and that have mostly been denied to her so far. So when Egwene asks Nynaeve how it feels, she is not just referring to the physical feeling of Nynaeve having the ring on her finger, but the feelings that come with Nynaeve's new status. Nynaeve looks at the situation very differently, and flinches when Egwene tries to touch her ring. Up until the day before, Nynaeve thought that she had complete freedom to choose whether to stay in the tower or not, to either pursue or reject a career as a channeler, and that her choice would only affect herself and perhaps Egwene, but nobody else. Now she understands that she does not have that choice and has really never had it, and that the future of humanity may well depend on Nynaeve's decision. This is a responsibility Nynaeve has never wanted, and which now has been forced upon her. For Nynaeve, the ring represents that responsibility, and the duty that she and Lan have to the world, and that duty surely weighs on them heavier than a mountain. This completes my analysis of the Accepted Test storyline. As you can probably tell, I thoroughly enjoyed it, because it works beautifully on so many levels. The writers managed to start off with a depiction of Accepted Tests that is faithful to the books, but then extended it to include elements of Flicker Flicker, Ta'veren interventions, and hinted at potential future complications related to the Nynaeve-Lan relationship, which may or may not happen in the show, all woven together into a believable and engaging storyline. Add to that nice little touches in the form of Nynaeve seeing her younger self in a reflection, the repeated motif of hiding a young child in a cellar, her dad reciting Old Tongue, and cameos for Michael McElhatton as Tamil Thor and Juliet Howland as Natty Cawthon. The execution was also virtually flawless, starting with beautiful set design and cinematography, seamless integration of VFX with practical effects, and topped off by stunning acting performances, especially by Zoe Robbins. The storyline also had just the right amount of depth and mystery in it to encourage theorizing, which I love. Overall, for me, this has been one of the major highlights of Season 2 so far. One of the interesting takeaways of this storyline is the way the writers decided to implement a part of Flicker Flicker, by first showing flickery image sequences, followed by characters being dropped into a mirror world. I hope that we see this again in future episodes for other characters. We're getting to the end of this video. I intend to produce some more content for Season 2, including a closer look at some aspects of Season 2, like which parts worked and which did not. Overall, I liked Season 2, but it is stylistically very different from what I expected and feels uneven in parts, especially regarding plot handling, and I intend to look into the reasons for this in some detail. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you've had fun, and please join me again for other videos on this channel. Also, please like, subscribe, and leave comments. The description of this video has links for all source material used in the creation of the video. Thanks again, and that's it for now.